people we have given power are challenging our integrity by lying over and over and over and over again to see what we're going to do about it. Right? We have to grieve the fact that that exists. We have to grieve the fact that our system is biased against pretty much everybody except for white males. There are some shiftings, right? Of course, there are some shiftings from that, but that is a brand that we are trying to change on every level by helping people to see themselves as multidimensional human beings.
Yes.
So if I can grieve the fact that that exists, then I can stop being resentful for people who are taught or educated in that system. And I can just start being different in that system and paying more attention to the people who respect me and less attention to the people who don't.
To a Broaderlands podcast.
The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcast are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast.
Tracee, welcome to Broaderlands podcast. It's good to have you back.
Always good to be here.
Yeah, you're one of my favorites, so thank you. And we're here to talk about some touchy subjects, bullying, politics, all that good stuff. That's why it's called Broaderlands podcast. Let's expand and have a healthy conversation. I think a lot of times we're so sensitive, we can't talk about this kind of stuff, especially with politics. I talked to Marianne Williamson, and I know she says something in her book, The Politics of Love, that as spiritual people, we should be talking about these things. And the reason why we're in this mess is because we suppress these, we don't talk about this stuff. We're told we shouldn't be talking about that stuff. Don't talk about that stuff.
Right.
But that's the reason why we're in this mess in the first place.
Absolutely. Well, and let me say one thing about sensitivity. When people are ultra sensitive about something, it's only because they don't want to be confronted about the validity of their ideas. And we as human beings, that's what we have the ability to do, is to contemplate our ideas, and what makes them valid is whether or not they're useful. And if something moves us forward in a positive way that begins to include other people, it becomes more and more useful, right? It doesn't make us a bad person because we have outdated ideas or we learned something that no longer serves us, right? We're not bad people. We are developing people. So take a deep breath and jump in.
So we need to learn how to have transformative political conversations, not suppress them.
Absolutely. That whole idea of, on so many levels. So I think of the topic of bias, how we see others before we know them, what we think about others or people, places, or things before we actually know anything about it. Right? That's our bias. When we have a bias towards a culture or an ethnicity or a skin color or a sexual orientation, we also have biases about assuming somebody's guilty even when we don't know anything about the case. Right?
Yeah.
There are different biases that predispose us to assuming we know what's happening. And it is those multiple lenses that everybody in our culture has had to process. And, in the 1950s, it was popular. Women shouldn't speak, and we should speak in a soft, low voice so that other people didn't feel confronted by our ideas, right? They didn't give women a right to vote until For Black people, it was 1955, and women, it was 1930, 1920, women's suffrage. Anyway, all of the reason why those things have existed in our culture is because of the bias that we carry. And we carry those biases because we do not want to confront our own ideas, ultimately leading back to our mortality. We don't want to develop or expand our ideas when we feel it's going to threaten our survival. Right? That's how basic it becomes when we resist conflict or conflicted ideas. You and I can have a conversation and we can completely disagree, and that's not even a conflict. That's a difference of opinion or a difference of idea or a difference of knowledge that we can continue to hash out until we can find a way to come to a common ground.
Learning how to agree to disagree is very healthy. You brought up something, and I love your book, Transformative Grief. It's like one of my favorites, and I think it's a study book. It's not just a one-time read, at least for me.
Yeah.
And grieving the system we live in, and you brought up something right now, how we can have these biases, especially like when someone's committed a crime and we're already blaming them. It brought me back to the time when, back in the, I forget when it was, the early 90s, or where those kids from New York they were blaming them for, they said they raped this woman.
Yeah.
And Trump went up there and voiced his opinion and said they were guilty. And they end up, they all served time. One of them served a lot of time. And
right.
They were innocent.
Yes.
But it brought back those biases, and it's like, man, we need to question that stuff.
I actually lived in Harlem at that time. I lived maybe 2 blocks away from where that crime was committed.
You remember the story better than me then.
I remember living through that story. I was 18 I was 18 or 19 years old. And so they created this fear around that of a bunch of wilding kids. Now, in Harlem, I don't know that it was necessarily a rough neighborhood. At the beginning, it was a desolate neighborhood. There were a lot of burnt out buildings and a lot of junkies and a lot of people who were struggling because the city was not putting any money into that neighborhood. But when that crime happened, they immediately assumed that it was this group of 5 young men, and they didn't know nothing about the backstory, nothing about what was happening behind the scenes ever came to light until the last decade. That's what was interesting, is at the time we were told, oh, we got them, it's these wilding kids, and now you got to be careful because there are these groups of wilding kids who would, and occasionally that would happen. There'd be a group of kids and they'd run past, and it happened to me. Some kid took my hat off of my head, and ran off with it, and shit happened, but it wasn't that. And one of the things that happens, especially in our system, is that people want an answer. When people are made to be frightened, they want an answer, and that provokes our policing system to find an answer. And so people get railroaded, and they're not willing to take the time that it needs in order to actually find out what in fact did happen, how it happened, why it happened, and what the actual truth is. They want to serve this fearfulness of the public by giving them a resolution, whether or not real. And that's what happened. And now we are beginning to prove with our ability to, with DNA testing and the more refined DNA testing that we have today, even better than we did even 20 years ago. We're now finding out how often we've been wrong. I remember being terrified, you know what I mean? But I was pretty, well, to say I was rageful is being gentle. So I did not, there were times I would be walking to and from my apartment, and I'd be daring somebody to fuck with me. I mean, that's how I was mad. Go ahead, bring it. Come on. It is hilarious. Yes, it's not lost on me. But I was a mad, in pain human being at the time in that place, and So I didn't, so I was I was able to overcome my fear with my own rage. But most people don't do that, right? Or when they do, really bad things happen.
Yeah.
So
What does politics mean to you? What is the definition of politics for you?
well, politics to me is the lowest common denominator that we have. What do I mean by that? It is the place where people begin to come together. And when I say low, I mean dense ideas. Politicians are fighting right now. All of the things that we're calling political, they're not. It is. I want to control this about you, or I want to control this, or I want to control this money, or it's about control, and control is a very low idea. Science has proven that cooperation gets so many more positive results than trying to control something ever will. But we as a culture, as a society, don't know that because we still have too many people attached to that idea that fear is going to save them. Right? When you don't have any space in your world for people who aren't like you or things that you're not comfortable with, then there is fear. Just there is nothing else. There is only fear when that is the case. And go ahead, you were going to say something?
Oh, no. I'm thinking out loud in my mind about politics and spirituality. Like, what's the definition for spirituality for you, and how can we utilize spiritual practices in politics to encourage more compassion, integrity, ethical leadership, while respecting like all these different identities and diverse belief systems that people are living in?
Well, see, here's the thing. That's the kaleidoscope problem. The only thing that you control, or the only thing that I control, is my own self-mastery. How willing am I to confront my own fears, to transform my own biases, and to begin to accept myself so fully that I can look at other people through the love of myself. Meaning, if I love me, I'm going to love you. I can say, wow, he's a terrific guy. He's totally an asshole, but I like him. He deserves to be, you know what I mean? It's like we can see somebody's fallibility, but love them despite it and make choices with them despite their fallibility. Right? And we can do that when we have acknowledged our own. And when we have a society where the critical mass, the numbers, 51% of the people in that society have done that thing, that's when we're going to fix the problem that you just said. That's when the system will change, because the system is going to be built on vision that includes everyone, as opposed to excluding everyone but yourself, or excluding many.
In your book, Transformative Grief, you talk about grieving in the system we live in. What does that mean? What does grief mean, and grieving in the system that we live in mean?
That means recently they're pretty certain that they just executed an innocent man. I believe he was in Mississippi. Anyway, it was a story in the last 3 weeks. And I just want to rip my own heart out.
Yeah.
And that's the grief. You have to grieve that that people think that way, and that they will do that. Right now in our politics, we have to grieve that people we have given power are challenging our integrity by lying over and over and over and over again to see what we're going to do about it. Right? We have to grieve the fact that exists. We have to grieve the fact that our system is biased against pretty much everybody except for white males. There are some shiftings, right? Of course, there are some shiftings from that, but that is a that is a brand that we are trying to change on every level by helping people to see themselves as multidimensional human beings. So if I can grieve the fact that that exists, then I can stop being resentful for people who are taught or educated in that system. And I can just start being different in that system and paying more attention to the people who respect me and less attention to the people who don't. Right? But you've got to grieve the fact that they exist and get mad about it. You know what I mean? Give yourself permission to really feel that anger, feel that grief, so that you can clear a space to move forward.
I love that. Give yourself permission to be angry. Because a lot of this stuff, for some people, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm just saying as in general, for some people like myself and my own experience, a lot of this for a long period of time, it was unconscious in me. I wasn't aware of it, that I had all this stuff, especially like the story, changing the narrative.
Yes.
You know, when I was a little boy, I would watch Hollywood and only the white guys saving the world. Only the white guy's the president. The only time I seen someone wearing my spacesuit, even though I don't like really strongly identify it as much like I used to, because I kind of I look at us as all human, beings, but I could appreciate humanity. But before, I was so identified with this spacesuit that it affected me in so many different ways, and I think we need to come to a place where there's equality. And that way we can transcend, the collective consciousness. But as a little boy, like that was already telling me stuff that, anytime I would see someone wearing this spacesuit, they were a drug dealer, a rapist, a convict, illiterate. They were just in a very lower position in life versus the white male. I mean, even the white male became God, Jesus, But so little by little after my awakening, I learned how to change that story, that narrative, because that was deeply ingrained in me from a young age.
Absolutely. I remember the first time somebody said to me, you've got to forgive your father for dying. I was 11 when he died. I didn't know him well. He was a public figure. And so I didn't ever have much time with him. And then my perception of him came more through all the adults around me who knew him. Because we lived together. We had very much a nucleus family, but we had no communication whatsoever. Anyway, so when he died, I didn't have a lot of attachment to that. And so when at 18, somebody said, you've got to forgive him for dying. I'm like, I don't even know him. What are you even talking about? And it took me a long time to recognize the idea of forgiving him, forgiving myself, forgiving the powers that be that put me in the position to not have the dad I wanted or to not have a dad at all. And when I could forgive that, it helped me to understand that, growing up in the 70s, we were not that progressive. Women didn't get credit cards until like 1974, I think. Right? So I was just coming in when we were starting just to inch forwards towards progress. But the surprise, the reality that even in my lifetime, women were not trusted with their own money or believed that they should have their own money or that they should work or they should have their own empowerment. Like these are all things that to me are no-brainers. Like it doesn't even make sense to me. But that was actually happening. And no doubt, my dad was very progressive, but my mom didn't work. You know what I mean? And as philosophical and spiritual as he was white. He was still top of the food chain in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. So I understood that, like, it made sense to me that I would not have done well with a strong male figure in my life. I could not have fully developed all that I am with any kind of conflict to it or resistance to me becoming who I was. And I was like, wow, now that shit made some sense to me.
Yeah.
So that brought me comfort because then that was when I could fully let go of how things happen for me and not feel bad at all and completely forgive him, like understand that it was intended to be that way, and the way it served me.
One of the major questions I would love to ask you, and I love to talk about this subject, is I'd love for you to broaden our lens on collective trauma and collective grief from a generational and cultural and ancestral perspective on how does this continue to impact us today, still to this day as a nation, or we the people.
Absolutely. So, okay, so anybody, there are soul imprints that each of us carry with us into our lifetime as the person we are today. The body that we have offers us the lens and the culture and maybe a body of knowledge through which to process all of the spiritual imprints that we have. The people who were enslaved in our country, when you are being oppressed to the point at which there is no freedom, there's also no freedom of expression. And so when you are in survival mode, you don't think about feeling bad about it, right? You don't cry about it. You don't feel sad. You either suck it up or you make a plan to change it, right? But it's a pressure cooker that requires only two different ways of dealing with it, and rightfully so, right? Because if you're in survival, 9 times out of 10, if you are going to bump up against whatever the authority is, you're going to die for the privilege, right? And that's so. Let's say 400 years ago. Let's go back to before the white folk came and the Spaniards came to our country, right? There were native tribes, and even the native tribes had conflict, but nothing was a threat in the way that the Spaniards coming and the colonialism and what happened in our country. And they were, on some level, spirit warned them of that, but there was nothing to do for it other than to walk through that process. So each one of those things is a circle of grief, right? There are times to live a life where you can actually process your grief in it, but mostly if there is a life and death situation happening, you die with that emotional energy and you bring it forward to whomever you become in your forward leaning incarnations. Because we don't always incarnate as who we are today. We have incarnated in every system, in every gender, in every ethnicity and skin color. That's one of the ways that a spirit develops itself and it grows, is because it literally walks in somebody else's shoes. So with whatever your experiences are, each person has to process out what they couldn't process in prior lifetimes. For me, the penne, I had multiple life imprints, memories of death, memories of being in. Oh, that's me. Paloma. She's talking to me. She said, "Oh, but let's see. Can I show you her?"
Sure.
There she is. Hi, Paloma. See, now she wants to be able to play it.
So cutie.
Okay, so I came in as an empath, and an empath is somebody who feels deeply all the time about everything. I feel my own stuff. I feel other people's stuff. I process that. That's just, it was a lifetime of processing. I cried every day, the first 50 years of my life. That was my job and my gift, right? Because doing that enabled me to understand what I'm telling you, but B, it gave me the opportunity to kind of do the grief work of 1,000 years or more. You know what I mean? I was able to process a lot, and so it enabled me to have compassion because I had felt so deeply for myself and others that I could see what they were experiencing and experience it myself, right? And there is, let's say, so the people in Gaza right now, they're in survival mode. They're trying to get a meal, trying to last the night. They're trying to tolerate, to deal with what is going on in their environment and to live another hour and another day. Within that, there is no time for grief, right? And so it will, when we have pockets on the planet, and there are always several of them, there are groups of empaths somewhere feeling some of that. Not always. I mean, always there is a slough off of the world's grief, and people who tune into it, who are in a safe place and are able to grieve for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
So
makes a lot of sense.
That's another circle of grief, right? So there's an individual processing their own spiritual grief, their cultural grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that we're seeing today, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, Latinx, all of these different relationships to different groups of people speaking up and owning their voice, telling the world who they are and claiming their right to be there. They're doing that for all the people who came before them that couldn't do that. Right? So they're speaking up for their ancestors. They are the voice of the ancestors.
And people are quick to point at those groups and put them down. Some people, not everybody. But instead of putting someone down or a group down, maybe we need to, as people, learn how to take a step back and question, what do they mean, or why did this manifest? What really caused this to pop up, and start to question things, and instead of putting someone down, and try to develop understanding, because I truly believe understanding is love's other name. It's kind of like you see a lot of police officers and people defending police, and I'm not saying policemen are bad, but there's something wrong when they're so quick to kill someone, running off of fear, because there's other methods you can do besides just shooting someone. We have tasers and stuff. There's so many other ways to. We need to start questioning that in a healthy way, instead of being so sensitive and really quick to choose a side to defend, because they're only human beings like everyone else. And if you're not, if you don't have a healthy sense of ego, and you have still all this, because they have a hard, fear-based, traumatizing job. If they don't work on that, maybe we need to put a new system in so they can deal with all their crazy work environment and experiences they may go through. Especially a lot of these guys, a lot of them are probably ex-military that have a lot of stuff, going on from being in war. But I think, or just biases like you talked about, and discrimination, and really acknowledge that before they start putting a gun and a badge on, and really having some kind of system to continue to work on themselves as they go through their, their career, because that's a hard job. I'm not saying they're bad, but there's got to be something a little bit, deeper to help them and guide them through these experiences they're going through on an everyday basis.
Right. The paradox of that is that in all these situations you're talking about, anybody who would make, when people don't understand, when you say Black Lives Matter, that doesn't say that other lives don't matter but Black people. That says that we have marginalized this group of people, and now it's time to acknowledge who they are, how they got here, what they've been through, what they've achieved, and say, yes, I see you. Right? That's what time it is. But when somebody resists doing that, it's because they themselves do not feel seen. Right? They're coming from a place of insecurity when they address that in conflict. The paradox about our policing system is that, that is a challenge. It's the same as politics. It is a challenge of authority, right? Anytime a person becomes the authority, they've got to decide the type of authority they're going to be. And anytime there's a question of power, that individual is going to be challenged on every level about their confidence, about the person that they are, about the knowledge that they have. And we are expecting an entire demographic, i.e. the policing system, we are expecting these people to be extraordinarily educated. And educated meaning knowing themselves more deeply than anybody else. Right? Because that's the only way you can stand in the face of being offered power and know when to embrace that and when not to. Right? That's the only they don't trust people enough to say, trust your intuition on how to handle that. They say nope, two center mass shots. That's what they teach. Right? Stop the threat and then we'll talk about it. Right? But then they do that, and then they discourage therapy. Like therapy in our policing system is something that, of course, it's completely necessary. You have to start talking about it and understand more deeply the impact. If you take a life or you injure somebody or change the entire course of how they live for the rest of their life on this planet, that's a burden. That is a karmic burden that either it exists and you process it or you don't, but it's there. Right? So we're asking and requiring this whole group of people to be extraordinary, to do an ordinary thing. I don't know if that makes
sense. No, it makes a lot of sense. When I hear Black Lives Matter, I hear all lives matter. They're voicing for help. Like, look, this is wrong.
Right.
What's happening. Like you said, for generations, this is happening for a very long time. I mean, the police developed in order to keep slavery intact, the slaves intact originally, right?
Yes.
So it's crazy. It's crazy to think about. We were talking about political bullying. What is bullying in general, and what is political bullying mean to you? Because I see a lot of negativity. I don't even like watching politics anymore. I don't like watching these candidates put each other down and who's going to be better at doing it seems like becomes the winner at times. It gets frustrating to watch.
Yeah. I think that so bullying in general. So I have a client who has a 13-year-old daughter. And right now she's going through the mean girl, like being bullied by mean girls and, working with. So we've been talking a lot about why a bully bullies somebody. They target somebody because they see a sense of doubt or questioning in them. So anybody in our society who is reflective or self-questioning or self-effacing or doubting or even curious becomes a target for people who don't know what to do with all the energy or power that they have. And because they cannot meet them where they're at, they target them with aggression. And when I say meet them where they're at, people who are bullies oftentimes struggle with broader ideas. Right? They don't know how to break down an idea and consider or contemplate something different than what they feel they know at the time. And it's much easier for them to take somebody else's idea and just go with that, which is what you're seeing in our political cycle right now. Instead of people doing their own research, they're taking what a candidate says or taking what a commercial says, and they're just going, okay, yeah, no, that's bad. We can't do that. We're not going to tolerate that. No way. Right? Rather than actually looking at the policies that have actually been changed, why they've been changed, and the impact that those policies are having on people right now. Because there is actually a way to get that information if you will look on your own. I do a podcast called Be a Slayer. And every time I start out with a topic and I Google it, I want to see what is the information that you can find out there. And you look at what you think are going to be reputable sources, but you have to filter through 30 or 40 different websites or papers or articles or whatever And then you can get a general consensus of what the truth is beyond what you may know about the topic, right? So that's something we all have to do right now, and people don't want to, frankly. They don't want to. This is oftentimes fun, and it's simple, and it's easy. So bullying is when you target somebody for your own amusement, frankly. I mean, that's their, who knows why a person actually does that and what motivates them to do that.
Yeah, one thing that what came to mind was the language that we're using. Like I like Kennedy. I think he's a good guy, but what trips me out is that he talks about making America healthy again, but then he starts pointing the finger that the Democratic Party is a war party, but then Trump's saying that we're going to blow up Iran. It's like, I think we need to stop pointing the finger at each other and really just start speaking with our heart and, and getting down to the causes and conditions, the root causes of everything. You can't make America healthy again with continuing to point the finger at people and putting other parties down. I think we need to take a step back and, start speaking from our heart.
Okay. So just for fun, what about Kennedy makes him a good guy? Why do you think Kennedy's a good guy?
I think a lot of these people, everyone has goodness in them, but they get caught up in politics, and it's a dark place. I mean, I even talked to Marianne about this. It's a rough place position to be. Blame game in politics. It just makes people ugly, and takes away the goodness in people.
Right.
They may be meant to.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go.
They may be, start off wanting to be helpful in certain ways, but he that pays the piper calls the tune, and there's these big corporate elites that are calling the tunes on everything. In many ways,
this is about who has the ability to consider you and your needs. I mean, that's what we're dealing with in our political landscape today. And when it comes to, for example, Kamala Harris, a lot of people are having a hard time accepting her because she's a woman. And they're the first to say, oh, I would absolutely vote for a woman, just not her. Right. And anytime somebody says that to me, I'm like, okay. Right. So they haven't really, or, what, I just don't think either candidate is good. In this landscape, we have, and I hate to use the word crazy, but we have, people who are just out of their mind, and then somebody who's not that. It's not even, for me, it's not even about policy. So how do we process through our biases? How do we do that? How do we, like I said, in this landscape, it's in the 50s and in the 60s, this makes Bill Clinton's infidelity, child's play, right? Like think about it, if you remember how mad people were at that. And then not only that, they got even angrier at how Hillary Clinton handled it. Like, I don't know if you remember that, but so our social mores changed, because now we don't care there is, there is at least 47% of people out there that have been polled who don't care that Trump's a felon. They don't, he has said over and over that he wants that he's going to be a dictator, that's what he aspires to, and that he wants to debunk or get rid of the Constitution. Like he throws out little things that he's telling people what he wants to do and how he wants to do it. And they see that as funny, right? Like this is the same thing that Hitler did in Germany. And that's the thing that I think that people don't. It's like anytime you have a person in power who is going to be hateful to more than half of their constituents, right? You have to question, like that we're all having this opportunity as a do-over. And that's why all of the gaslighting that happens, and there are people, people believe that Kamala, people believe that the Democrats and the Republicans and this and that. Every person has to take into consideration their own lens and then find out the truth for themselves. But make no mistake, some of these, like, people are telling you what they're going to do, and you're going to be responsible for that. Like, that's when we talk about making this choice. I hope that on November 10th, let's say, I mean, we might know on the 6th, maybe we don't know for a while. So let's say on November 20th, I hope that everybody's going to feel good about how they weighed in. Not because I say so, not because Kamala says so, not because the Democrats say so or the Republicans say so, but because you did your research, you witnessed what people said, you witnessed what they've done, you looked at their record, right? Are they a person who they said what they were going to do and then they did it, right? So back to make this full circle about political bullying, people need to be willing to have the conversation. That was why I asked you that directly. What about him do you like? Talk to me. What about him do you like? Because that's we need to be able to do. Yeah, no, we need to be able to.
Yeah, what I liked about him was he was actually talking about addiction. I think that's a major problem in the country. And Marianne talks about addiction. I think that needs to be a big topic, regardless who's becomes president. We need to acknowledge this problem of addiction in the country and around the world. But I always wonder: is the system we live in making us sick? Is it creating addiction? That's a big question we need to look at. And I believe it is. I believe it's creating addiction. Part of it is with both parents needing to work. When a female has a child, she doesn't have the proper amount of time to be with the child because most people are on survival mode, et cetera, et cetera. We could go down the list, but yeah, just so, I really love that. I think he knows how to speak. He's a good speaker, but that doesn't make him a good person. I think he has a lot of great qualities in him, but just like everyone else here, that we all have our own flaws and our own biases and discriminations and stuff. So yeah, I think there's some good stuff, but I feel like he fell back into that little trap, with politics, and maybe there's some resentment around there, and he needs to look at. I don't know. What's that principle that that's in the dollar bill? E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. I think we need to go back to that principle and start, questioning these political identities and these labels and our verbiage and like Washington said, he warned us about sectionalism. We can call that political parties today, and really just it's about we the people. I think it's our responsibility as people to start looking at how it's created a divided states of America and try to go back to the United States of America. Right. There's a soul spiritual problem right now in America, in my opinion. And I think we need to start going back to the basics with spiritual principles to try to work on the spiritual problem with the spiritual solution with politics.
I agree. I have many things to respond to all of that. So first of all, thank you for telling me what you think about him and what you like in him, because now I know you a little more. Right now I have to see you as a person and not think, oh God, he likes, right? Now I see you, I hear you, and now it's no longer about politics. It's a deeper understanding about the person that you are and what you value. Now I know you because we've had a political conversation. In terms of, so my perspective, like what you are calling spiritual sickness, I see this as coming back to 0 point. We are addressing the deepest elements of ourselves right now as a society, in politics, and the planet. This is actually, this period of time is the end of a 25,000 year cycle where all of these cataclysms, right, are coming up to be addressed. Anything that we've done in our past, we are reckoning and balancing the scales. And part of balancing the scales is being able to confront what we may believe about ourselves or somebody else, what we believe about the planet as opposed to what's going on. So politics is kind of one of the lenses that we do that through, which is why it's all, there's what somebody tells you they are, and then there's what they do, which is what, what they are, right?
False hope.
Right. So I think that this is requiring all of us to face ourselves, to face who we are, what we want. How willing are we to have a real conversation and see the other person rather than making it about the candidates? Right? Because that's if when each of us is balanced, we're going to hit a 51%, and then things are going to expand and minds are going to naturally change. People are going to see themselves and transform and find ways to heal and change their behavior and just start to see things differently. That is going to happen. And it is only going in the direction of love. There is no other direction to go. So, however long, whether we start now or we do it in another 4 years or another 4 years or another 4 years, however long it takes us, and however much damage we do in the process, right? Because that's, how much more do we need to happen? That's what everybody has to ask themselves. How much more do we need in order to see this? And know that, whatever your perspective is, your spirit will carry you through. Whatever you need from this experience, you're going to get it, right? Whatever bully presents themselves. I was thinking at some point today, anytime I prepare, like to chat with you, spirit just sends me different ideas, or I have like little conversations with you before we're talking. And I was thinking about how, there's a ton of anonymous bullies online. People like to just, that's what it was. This, the young man from One Direction who just died. Evidently, people are bullying his girlfriend, saying, well, did you push him? Oh, they're so awful. But what's interesting is that people do stuff like that. But the truth is, there are, one of the things that I've learned, people have tried to bully me online. I mean, that's what it is. I don't really care if people troll me. I don't participate in that. And some of them, one time, usually I hide any particularly nasty comments, I hide them. Well, this day, Spirit said, don't hide it. Leave it. It was on an ad that I put out there. And do you know that because that guy was trolling me, I got 12,000 hits, right? In like a 24-hour period. It was like more action than I've seen ever in a period, right? And it helped me to understand that, people bring this negative stuff, but when they do it online, they're doing it because it does cause a trending reaction. That's what happens with online. And so that's what you're seeing right now. We've created this culture where if I say something nasty to you, or if I'm confrontational, or I do X, Y, or Z, and it's negative, it's going to cause a trending reaction where people are going to want to know just because it's trending. Right? And then there is a consequence to that, which is misinformation and untruth. And that exposure to misinformation is teaching each of us that we have to be accountable for what we receive as truth and what we don't.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm a huge Marianne Williamson fan. That's my go-to if I had to pick. I'm a I just love I do believe we need more female leaders. I think that's the problem. We're imbalanced. I think females could process stuff better than men, and not all, but I think a lot of women could process things more healthier than men do. Maybe
Well, I
that's a
think,
little bias there. I don't, I
I
don't
think,
but
well, here, I understand why you say that. Men and women process differently, and for men, I think we have done men in general a disservice by teaching them to not process. And
yeah,
so,
yeah,
uh, uh, culturally speaking, they're a little, in general, as a whole, stereotypically, they're a little behind the eight ball on their ability to process because they have been discouraged from going through what it takes to process something, to allow that the the process, the ache, the pain, and then the transformation to the new vision. Men can absolutely do that, and they do that in their own way. But we as a society have not supported men in doing that. And that's why we're sitting in this position.
I totally agree with you that unhealthy masculinity, big boys don't cry. They don't know how to deal with our emotions. I was a very angry person for a very long time, quick to react with violence or verbiage that probably doesn't sound healthy, but to put people down or hurt them. But I think when we do inner work, and I think every president should, whoever's running for president should do some work. We need proof of shadow work, some inner work, some kind of thing to really balance out that male and female energies that exist within all of us. And when that two become one, I think enlightenment occurs, and I think you could be more compassionate, more loving,
Right.
utilizing your mind and heart more proper, and it clears up our window of perception from biases, discriminations, and it helps us make better choices as a leader. So I think all these people running for president should show some proof of shadow work or some inner work that they've done for a certain period of time.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I was going to ask you about psychic attacks. Could you share on psychic attacks? And I guess my question is, how do we get psychic attacks, and how are we targeted to have these things by other entities, or maybe maybe share what a psychic attack is first before I open my mouth.
So the psychic channels are anything that is not in the physical realm, right? It's spiritual, it's energetic, it's telepathic, right? So earlier today, I was thinking about our chat. Before we were having the chat right now, I was thinking about it. So you and I were having a telepathic conversation, right? I don't know what you were doing while we were doing that, but I was getting my hair done and sitting in the chair and mulling over. So let's say I'm sitting in the chair and I'm thinking, oh, that boo-boo, right? And I'm frustrated with you, or I'm angry. Then I'm sending those psychic frustrations to you. And those negative thoughts is what we call psychic attack. Now, there are many ways to do that. A lot of people practice different forms of magic, which is basically putting all your energy intent and focusing it on a person, which is the same thing as any telepathic relationship, right? So when somebody is thinking bad things about you, for you, in connection to you, and you are doubting yourself and you are vulnerable, you're going to feel that. Right. And usually that's going to end up in a psychic conversation where, you're, this is how I feel. This is what I want. This is where I'm at. Right. Have you ever had a relationship and you guys are fighting and you're far apart, but you're going back and forth in your head? Well, this is what I want and this is how I feel. And this is what happened. Right. Well, you weren't alone in that. Right. There's always somebody on the other end giving you feedback energetically. Right. And that's what we have. When it is negative or when it is offered with malicious intent, that's what we call a psychic attack. right? But psychic attack is just a negative telepathic conversation.
So if someone has a lot of trauma, unresolved trauma, is in a lower vibration, are they easily targeted, or can they have a psychic attack much easier versus someone that done a lot of work on themselves?
So when you're talking about entities, so there are actual entities that have never incarnated. Their whole purpose is to create chaos. There are some that are and when you are processing out trauma, oftentimes when people have spiritual attack from other entities, it's because they have had some sort of interaction with those entities in other lifetimes or other experiences, or connected to them through a group of people that they're with or their family. Sometimes entities are transferred down the line of ancestry until somebody figures out that they exist and helps to deliver them where they need to go, or helps them to heal and to, I guess, become neutral again. So when that happens, if somebody like as an empath, I was born multi-spirited, and I had lots of I call it demonically challenged. I had night terrors every night, and I would wake up and then I'd be in the bed and you're laying there and I can't breathe, and then I would go into the Lord's Prayer, which I had never learned, mind you, in this lifetime. I've never been taught, but I would just say, "Oh Lord," and I would go into this whole thing, and then it would dissipate. But that was like every night for me for a good majority of my childhood, and not a good majority, my whole childhood, until I started as an adult to understand and look more deeply as to why those entities were around me, what purpose did they serve, why were they there, how did they get there, and what did I need to do with them. So people who are vulnerable to the psychic channels are often going to find they're going to be open to more dense vibrations, because that's what becomes obvious, right? If somebody says, well, I always think of, saying something really heinous, usually sexually explicit. That's oftentimes what demons, they'll use that as an opportunity to get your attention. So if you are hearing that in your sleep, or you're aware of that, it's not because you are a bad person. It's that this is your time to awaken to all the dimensions that exist, and it's your opportunity to set a boundary, right? Because you can be open to something, and then you could say, nope, nope, not happening, not you, not doing this, absolutely not. And that energy can't do anything but to follow your lead, because you are here when you stay in your realm, which is the physical. When you stay here, they can't come here without your permission. So when you set a boundary and you say, nope, they're going to stay there, and they're going to keep coming. They're going to keep trying until you are willing to say, okay, who are you? Where do you come from? Why are you here? And how can I help you move out? How can I help you do that? If I have had some relationship to you being here, then I want to help you to move on, right? But there always has to be some sense of accountability. I remember one time this gal, a friend of mine, she stopped being my friend because she said that my demons kept attacking her. And I was like, well, not really, but that's okay. I get it. I get it. Nobody wants to be around the infested one. Trust me. But the truth is that we are only available and open to things that we already carry. Right? We are open to somebody else's anger because we carry anger. We are open to somebody's shame because we feel shameful about something. Right? Everything for a period of time is going to lead us back to something in ourselves until we actually make a choice and confront it directly.
Yeah, thank you.
Did that
I guess
answer your question?
and my next question is, can we have that, if we can have that happen to us as an individual, can that happen to us as a collective, like as a nation, and get a psychic attack and entity attachments? Is that possible?
Explain to me what you mean by that.
Well, I guess if that can happen to each and every any of us individually, can that happen to us collectively? Of what you just explained as an individual experience.
I mean, yeah. So any group of people has a connection to a collective spirit, but because here's the thing, you have to understand that. So let's say you have a group of white people right now. Let's say there's 50 white people, and they all come together for whatever draws them together right now. Every one of those has incarnated differently in multiple other lifetimes. So they're bringing the weight of everything that they were into this situation. So when you talk about collective, there is collective agreement, like all the people that are dying in groups because of war, like 9/11. How many people died? 3,000 and something. That was a collective group that decided to, and when I say decided, they don't go, oh, yeah, let's do that. On some level, it's an agreement they made with themselves before incarnating, right? So there are absolutely. So I have a connection to the reason why I was so demonically challenged. Part of that was that I was a bishop in the Vatican. I'm not exactly sure how far back that went because I've not done that lifetime work just yet. I mean, I've that meaning I don't have all the details yet. What I'm telling you is all I know right now. And I've got 2 or 3 other people in my life that were connected to me in that lifetime that I'm paying, you know, I'm paying dearly in those relationships, to find balance.
So
go ahead.
No, so is that why you knew the Lord's Prayer without learning it in this lifetime?
I suspect that it is, yes. Yeah. So do it like that. It's a karma, right? It's a pattern that I've been changing, and I've changed many, and all of those relationships are no longer obviously as they were then, but it's what I brought in this body of knowledge. It's also part of the reason why I am not, I'm spiritual in this lifetime. I love churches, but I don't necessarily love religion. I love ritual, and I'm a solitary practitioner, that through and through, because I know too many different traditions to just practice just one. So I have created my own relationship to the Creator and the rituals that I do to awaken that for me.
So you're a heretic.
That's it. Yes.
You know the root Greek meaning, it just means choice. So you have your own choice on your own path.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a witch through and through.
What I like talking about different lifetimes, it's not just a one life experience, and different incarnations or reincarnations, whatever people believe, because some people want to argue over using the word reincarnation versus incarnations. But I think just 3D language that we're trying to share to expand on. But anyways, if I knew I maybe the past life I was an Asian lady, or
Uh-huh.
I was white from Europe at another time, or black in Africa or wherever. The more I can understand that, the more we can understand that, probably the less biases, discrimination, and racism. Maybe that'll dissolve. The more understanding we have what's really
Absolutely.
goes on in the other side, and in the divine mystery, I like to call it, or the
Yep.
cosmic game. Just
Absolutely.
question stuff. But when we think we only have one life, okay, I'm Mexican.
Right.
it just, I think that creates about all this ignorance within me, within any of us, if we don't start to question and or do some inner work and go within. I
Uh-huh.
don't know. I feel like I'm mumbling, but
No, that's
so I think it's a
that's
great topic.
absolutely, it is.
Mm.
For me, spiritual imprints. If you don't want to say, if you don't believe
Yeah.
you've had many lifetimes, then we all have spiritual imprints. Some more than others. You know what I mean? I definitely, in my clan, all the people I know have, 20 plus, right? We all have multiple things, and we're working through all of them. And then I know a lot of people who don't really, my sister, for example, she is uh, very simple, and I mean that positively. I mean, she's really smart, but she feels a particular way. She believes things are a particular way, and that's that. And she's got a couple of things that trigger her. Religion is one of them. Don't say anything about any church, and she blows up. You know what I mean? She is who she is, and she knows who she is, and that's it. There's no confusion for her. Where people who have multiple spirits or many different imprints, there's a period of time where you have to kind of really go into each one of them to fully glean the wisdom that you gained by having those experiences or being enlightened from that thing, and take it all in and then integrate it. Right? And that's when you talk about shadow work, that's what that is that taking all that wisdom and integrating it into the person whom you are born to be today.
Mhm.
The person
I
who
love how
you
you.
are. Go ahead.
Oh no,
You're
I'm
going to come.
sorry.
Please go ahead.
No, no, I love how you even talk about that in your book. Where's that? Heal Your Soul History.
Uh-huh.
About the spiritual imprints. I love that part.
Yes.
So yeah, I appreciate your work and your books, and
It's right there.
yeah, it's great.
It's so important to give yourself the freedom, give yourself permission and the freedom to explore. It might feel like it's your imagination. You say, God, am I making that up? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're making it up.
Mm.
Learn from it. Take it in. Breathe it in. Feel that. See what it is for you. Pick up that morsel and chew it up, and then spit out what you don't need.
You brought something up earlier, and I told Neil Donald Walsh this. The problem with love thy neighbor as thyself is most people don't love themselves anymore. Many people, I can't speak for everyone, but if you really take observe and look at the collective, you can tell people don't love themselves, and maybe
Right.
there's trapped emotions, trauma, whatever, but it's that disconnection. But because I understood it in me, so I could see it in, I have a better understanding because I understand me. So that's where I could see it, with not judging someone in a negative way, but just understanding, like, oh, okay. But yeah. So how do we get it? What's some advice you can give us to just love ourselves, and acknowledge our inner wounds, or biases, or discriminations, or maybe hatred, resentment, whatever is in us, because we're all human beings and we're all going to have some of this stuff. I think it's impossible to, walk out of it with not having some of it in us. So, or have this experience without having it in us. What are
Right.
some of the practices you can give us, or advice to kind of acknowledge that and maybe work on that, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't mind at all. So I think that to love yourself begins with learning to trust yourself.
Hmm.
And trusting yourself begins with accepting things as they are today. I, over the pandemic, gained like 40 pounds. Oh, good God. It doesn't feel right for me. It's not about necessarily my body image, but I don't feel good in it. And there came a day when I'm like, dude, you have just got to just be where you're at and start dealing with your relationship to food and your relationship to health and so I finally started digging deeper. And this wasn't a new idea for me, but I just hadn't really gotten to this next level of dealing with my own relationship to fear of lack. I was fearful that there wasn't going to, at some point, a day would come and there wasn't going to be another meal for me. That's not an experience I've had in this lifetime. We definitely were poor when my dad died. Mom, I don't know how she got us what she did out of her budget. Let me say that. She was a magician. But my issue around lack wasn't because I've not had it in this lifetime. It came from something else, something much more deep that that created the foundation of belief that a day was going to come. What was I going to do? I better eat now, and I better eat everything that's on my plate because maybe later there's not going to be enough. And so I started to really just give myself permission to say, it's okay. You don't need to eat it all. You don't need to eat the whole plate. You don't need to serve yourself that much. You could not eat for 3 days and I bet you'd be fine. Right? And I started talking to myself like that and just reminding myself over and over and over and over. And then things started to shift. I lost 10 pounds and I got down 15 pounds. And then now it's like I eat what I want, but if I let myself eat what I want, I eat so much less than when I try to eat healthy, right? So there's all of these different, I started trusting myself that I'm going to be okay. I can recontextualize my relationship to food. I've never gone without in this lifetime, and so I'm certain I never will. So with that in mind, don't stock up for winter. Like get comfortable having less. And so I've just been practicing that every day and reassuring myself, trusting myself that this was the path that I was going to take to get me where I needed to go. And that's the thing, that people need to accept where they're at, trust themselves that they know. It's nice to get advice from other people. It's even nicer to witness what other people do and receive some of that for yourself if it inspires you. But most of all, it's imperative that you trust yourself to access the information you need to make the choices and have the discipline that you need to get yourself where you need to go. All of those things are, in fact, loving yourself. Trusting yourself is loving yourself. The more you trust yourself, the more you are at peace with seeing others as they are, trusting them or not trusting them, and knowing that neither of those things matter. Because if you see somebody as they are and you accept them, then you set boundaries accordingly. Right? Then you have this whole other level of safety. And that sense of safety says, I love you. It's loving yourself is an activity. It's a way of being. And when I can do that with myself, I can do that with you. I love you too, boo boo.
I love you too. It's funny, because that sounds corny to probably, especially with guys, or maybe even women as well. But I can actually take a pause and talk to myself and tell that little inner child that he is loved, he is safe. Tell that voice to talk to the hand. Just try to make him feel safe. I think I've been a scared little boy for a very long time. So learning how to just pause and just talk to that inner child and let them know everything's okay. It's very important to do it, but some people may think that's crazy, but I don't.
The question isn't whether or not their voice is talking to you. The question is whether or not you're answering them. Right? Because crazy is when they talk and we try to pretend they're not there. So they just get louder and louder and louder. But every time you turn, you're like, what? Right? Have you ever? One time, I was standing in the line at Big Lots, and there was this kid standing in back of me, and I could feel this energy on him. It was a demonic energy. It was big and it was fierce. And he was like a little, I think he was a pretty big kid, but he was about 14 years old, stood just a little taller than me. And I could feel him in back of me. And he started saying under his breath, this thing started speaking through him, kind of some nasty stuff. And I'm just like, I'm so tired today. So I'm sitting there and then he says it. He says something again. And finally I was like, what? And I said it in my mind. I did not physically turn around, but my spirit, I in my mind, I visualized, I turned around and I'm like, what? What? And the energy just dropped. And then I turned that, by that time the clerk was processing through my stuff. And I was paying her, and then I could feel it ginning up again in back of me. And so at this point, what was interesting too is that the clerk, she could see everything. For whatever reason, she had eyes and she could see everything that he was going through. And anyway, so I took my stuff and I'm like, I ran out to my car, got my stuff in my car, and then I took a moment and I'm like, okay, Spirit, if the point of all this is it's time for him to let go of that thing, boom, now done. That thing's got to go. And wouldn't you know, the 14-year-old kid came out. Like when he walked out that door, the thing was gone. He had Skittles and some Gatorade in his hands, and he didn't even notice me. That was the other interesting thing. He looked right past me as if I wasn't there. He didn't see me anymore because that thing was gone. I don't even know why I told you that story. There was a reason for it. I don't know why I told you that, but we loving ourselves. But sometimes we have to turn and face what we don't want to, even if we're tired, even if we don't feel like it. Sometimes we just have to turn and face it, or just in our mind turn and face it. Like in that case, I didn't confront the young man because he didn't know what was going on. I confronted the spirit, and I did it directly and unwaveringly. Right. And I think that I wasn't always in this level of confidence in the spirit world in the way I am today. I had to practice that. Situations came up in my life where I had to practice that. And I had all the experiences that I did to practice that. Right. So whatever your karma is, you're gonna be given the obstacle and the solution all in one package, which is you. And then you just practice what you are given.
Yeah, thank you. Do you believe if we begin to work on ourselves, if we all take responsibility, because we're always taught, like, I don't know, but I can't speak for everyone, but it seems like for me, the way I perceive everything, we're taught through religion and politics to look for some savior, instead of really like taking back my own authority and my own authenticity and intuition and all that good stuff. Instead of looking for someone else to fix something, maybe as a collective, we should start, going back to our authority, our own savior, which is within us.
Yes.
But I think if we do that, maybe the whole politics will change dramatically.
It has to. And right now we have politicians that represent the densest among us. We can't have anything more than that because we have to have the people who represent
the reflection.
masses. Right. It's a reflection of where we're at as a collective. And so as we all shift and we transform and we own our own authority, we don't require other people to tell us what we can and can do. We make choices for ourselves that not only do well for us, but also will do well for others. Right? When we start to do that and we take responsibility for that, then the consciousness shifts and we will have leaders that represent those ideologies.
What's crazy, when I was in Ohio, I went back to go get my GED and stuff like that. And, all the biases I seen in my teacher and discrimination that was fed through the media and probably their environment, because I had understanding, it didn't affect me. Again, by doing my own inner work, I think we become more life sensitive versus ego sensitive. The best way to describe that, and where you can have understanding and not be so easily reactive or hurt by their actions or their verbiage and stuff like that. But anyways, I seen how a lot of the fears fogged up their perception. Certain people, like towards me, because I'm wearing this spacesuit. And being from Los Angeles, I'm going to the other side of the country, and but because I had that understanding, it gave me I don't even want to use the word shield, but it didn't bother me. It did, but it didn't, right? As it should have been if I didn't do inner work back in my early days. I'd be very reactive. I'd probably be some violence acts or whatever, but that didn't affect me anymore because I've done my own work.
Absolutely. Well, I think that maybe you saw it as their problem, not yours.
Yeah.
Their own bias is their problem.
Yeah, you're right. And I think when I did my own work, doing my own work, and I think I understood the ignorances within me, and how my upbringing, my culture, my whatever influenced me easily. And when I understood that, I could see how it did the same for them, which means okay, I don't have to take it personally, like you said. So you're right.
You know what my favorite response to when people say ignorant shit? Is that true? Being a white person.
That's a good one.
It's a good one. When somebody, I'm always shocked that people, and because I think people know me and they just know me, but then they'll say some racist shit thinking that I think like them. They'll think because I'm white that I must think this way too. And so that's been a fun response is, true. It's true. And you just leave it there with the question, because then there's no defense. They can't get angry. They can't respond to you because you're asking a question. Is that true? Right. But so it makes them answer, is that true? And then they, the more angry they get is the commitment they have to staying in their ignorance.
I love that. Is that true? I'm gonna have to use that one. That's powerful. That's powerful. It really is. Questioning. Yeah.
Yeah, and the holidays are coming up. I mean, it's such a useful statement, because if let's say you're a sibling, right? I'm the youngest of 3. And so there was always, not sibling rivalry, but, being the youngest, I was always picked on, and, people have opinions of you because you're the youngest. And anytime you go back, I mean, I don't really have the family dynamic anymore, but when you're going into a family situation and you've got relatives that are going to say stuff about you or to you, is that true? Is that true, Uncle Pat? Is that true? It's a very non-confrontational way to get them to shut the fuck up. And I say that with all the love.
I love that. If you had one thing to share, and everyone just paused, all of America paused right now, and they tuned into some big flat screen TV up in the sky. If you had one message to share with us, what would you say?
My future is your responsibility.
I love that. Thank you. Do you have any other last words you would like to say, or?
No, this has been a fantastic conversation, as it always is. I said those last words because I think that people really need to, I want people to say that about themselves. When you think of your friends and your family, Your future is their responsibility. And they can say the same to you. I mean, that's something that we say to each other. My future is your responsibility, and your future is my responsibility. So
I love that. It's actually kind of acknowledging our interconnectedness as well, because everything has a ripple effect because we're all one. My friend Patty O, she used to say a prayer, "May others treat me tomorrow as I treated others today." And if you actually apply that and use that, that will create change. That's what it did for me, and it helped me be more mindful, more aware. So thanks for coming on. There's a beautiful there's a whole I love your book. Yeah, go ahead.
This is my new, or you can't really see it, it's Oracle of the In-Between. It's a new Oracle deck that addresses the times of the in-between, like the multi-dimensional world and how we interact. Wow. So you and I came together, there's you, there's me, and there's what is between us. And that in-between world is where change and creativity happen. And that creativity it helps us to grow and develop and express and to live. That's where we live, is in that dimensional place. And so this is a deck that describes those dynamics, and it's a fun deck to use. I don't know if anybody, you can use it as a wisdom deck or an oracle deck. You can use it any way you want. And it's new, and it comes November 15th, so everybody can go order it now.
Well, thank you for letting us know. I apologize that I didn't bring that up.
No. I'm always good for a shameless plug, so.
Well, I'm going to end it with the quote. I'm going to actually end it with two quotes, one from your book and one from Marianne Williamson. You said in your book, Transformative Grief, because you have a number of books. Let me make that clear. You said, before you change the system in which you live, you must strengthen yourself. Transformative grief. Thanks for saying that. It's a beautiful statement. And then Marianne says, love each other is not just a prescription for personal salvation. It is a prescription for political renewal as well. So I thought they went together perfect. So thank you. Thanks for coming on.
I love seeing you.
Love seeing you too. Namastizzle.
Just know we out here. Know we out here working in a major way. Had to speak on it just to make a break. Any given subject, know we make a way. Time to level up on a day-to-day. Know we out here working for the greater good. Expand your mind, broaden your lens the way you should. From the stars to the galaxy to speak on spirituality. Higher understanding for the neighborhood.